Great. Good morning, everyone, wherever you may be sitting. My name is Margie O'Driscoll, and I'm the competition advisor for the Architecture at Zero competition. On behalf of the American Institute of Architects California, I'd like to welcome you to the announcement of the winners of this year's competition. This is our 13th competition and perhaps our most exciting yet. We are honored to have you here with us. This year's competition site was in Antelope Valley in northern Los Angeles County in California. The challenge was to design a building that would serve two distinct and important uses. The first, to serve as the heart of the community as a La Plaza Cultural Center, a year-round educational and cultural venue. The building will also transform into a resiliency asset during regional emergencies, offering critical support for evacuees, first responders, and multi-agency operations. In a small footprint, entrants were asked to consider two complex programs. And all of you entrants joining us today, you did an outstanding job, and we'll tell you more about what the jury thought in a few minutes. Putting together a competition like putting together a competition entry involves many hands, minds, and hearts. I'd like to thank especially those listed on this slide. Some special shout outs to Nate Heckman and Anna LaRue from Resource Refocus. Nate and Anna are extraordinary partners in developing the competition and providing the detailed resources to make this competition not only helpful for our entrants, but essentially an academic course in a box. Anna and Nate, as always, it's been such a pleasure to work with you. And to all the staff at AIA California who gently touched all the aspects of this competition, thank you for your professionalism and continued dedication to making this an extraordinary effort. And to Geraldine O'Brien, who chatted with so many of you entrants, encouraging you, managing all the details, and making this project look so easy. It's a masterful art, and your much-needed humor and flexibility are remarkable. Thank you. This competition is funded by a group of three utilities in California, SCE, PG&E, and SoCalGas, and it's managed by the American Institute of Architects California. These entities come together to fund and develop the broad parameters of the competition, recommending that the competition focus not only on decarbonization, but also equity and resilience. Creating a more equitable and resilient world is the aspiration of many in the design industry, but we're still on a journey to make it so. This is one of the first competitions to try and embed concepts of decarbonization and equity and resilience, and that makes it a very difficult competition. Finding the right partner for a competition is never easy. We seek a real site, a real client, and a real program idea. It's our goal to provide competition entries to a nonprofit client to expand their thinking and shape plans for a site. Finding the right partner takes time and not a little persuasion. This year, our partner was the Antelope Valley Fair and Event Center in Lancaster, California. The CEO of the center is Dan Jacobs, one of the most enthusiastic and thoughtful leaders in his community. The center just hosted a Gothic market, regularly hosts bingo, and is getting ready for Rallycross and an exotic bird show, and then the county fair. It's an amazingly busy enterprise, and Dan's indefatigable personality makes it all seem to run seamlessly. Dan, I wonder if you might share a bit about having a building that is both a year-round educational and cultural venue and a resilient center will serve the people of Antelope Valley.
Well, thank you, Margie. And I'd like to thank everyone at Architecture at Zero. And I also like to thank all the sponsors, the judges, and especially the participants who've dedicated their time, energy, and their phenomenal creativity to this competition. I also want to say that the AV Fair and Event Center is so honored to have been selected for this year's project partner. You know, our vision for La Plaza has always been twofold. First, to serve as a year-round cultural and educational venue. It will provide opportunities for members of our community to experience different cultures through art, performances, design, educational programming, and of course, food. People will be able to come together and celebrate their diversity. And also, as I've experienced in the last few years, a place that reminds a lot of the people of home. Second, it will be a facility to support our first responders and emergency personnel during emergencies. In today's world, communities need spaces that are not only welcoming, but are also prepared and adaptable for whatever emergencies may come. On behalf of the AV Fair and Event Center and our entire community, thank you so much for sharing your visions with us. We are excited to learn your ideas, and we are so grateful to you for sharing them with us. Your contributions will benefit our community for generations to come. Thank you again.
Dan, so great to have you with us. It's been such an honor to get to work with you. We've had so much fun.
Thank you.
Um, Let me now introduce you to Nikki Dennis Stevens. Nikki is the Executive Vice President of the American Institute of Architects California. She leads the largest statewide architectural organization in the United States, which is well known for being innovative and its very deep commitment to sustainability. With over 11,000 members, they are focused on improving the quality of the built environment. Nikki herself has worked for AI California for over 20 years, but she looks much younger. And she's held a variety of positions there. She's widely acknowledged as one of the most impressive leaders within the AIA, and she's been an enormous advocate for this project and a passionate leader for the profession. Nikki, we can't thank you enough for your personal support of this effort, and I wonder if you'd like to say a few words on behalf of AIA California.
Thanks so much, Margie, and to all of you who have participated in this competition over many years. To our esteemed jury, we absolutely couldn't do this without you, and to all the people who make this possible. Margie mentioned many of you at the start, but to all of our participants. One of the things that we are proud at AIA California and why we continue to champion this competition is, fundamentally, we believe in the power of design thinking to address some of the state's most urgent challenges. We believe that architects are uniquely trained to integrate environmental performance, resilience, community needs, and provide long-term value into a single solution. And whether you're just starting in this profession or have been here for many years, we know that our world and our planet is facing some big challenges, and it's competitions like this that inspire ideas and innovative thinking. One of the things that we've seen over the years is, the value of this competition is not that every proposal will be built. It's that it encourages that innovation and interdisciplinary problem solving and a mindset focused on what's possible. I think that this competition really exemplifies the values that we hold dear, and it sends a clear message that high performance design is not a niche interest, but essential part of the profession's responsibility to the public and to California's future. And we're excited to see the recipients of today's honors, and again, thank you to you all for making this possible.
Thanks, Nikki. And thanks again to your whole team. They've been just such a pleasure to work with. Okay, before we announce the winners of the competition, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what the competition entailed. Most of you on this in this Zoom meeting are people who entered the competition, but I like to say that this is a portion of for your friends and others who didn't enter the competition to understand a little more deeply about how complicated this task was. So this year's Architecture at Zero competition was open to students and professionals worldwide. The challenge was to design a year-round educational and cultural venue, which we call La Plaza, that will transform into a resiliency asset during regional emergencies, which gives it the title of an emergency operations center, which would offer critical support for first responders and multi-agency emergency operations. La Plaza would be a 2-story, 10,000 square foot building that would host lectures, community events, and performances and exhibitions. During an emergency, the building would be used by first responders. With interactive programming, cultural events, and educational exhibits, La Plaza would integrate both cultural and resiliency goals to create a multifunctional space that was to be both forward-thinking and community-centered. There were 4 parts to the competition. Entrants created an overall site plan to accommodate the program. Entrants were encouraged to highlight any energy efficiency, renewable energy, energy storage, and carbon reduction strategies or systems shown. Entrants designed the building in detail, demonstrating how the design would lower carbon emissions and embodied carbon, addressing the very specific requirements of California's Title 24 Building Energy Efficiency Standards. To demonstrate how the building design will lower carbon emissions, entrants also provided required documentation and could also include supplementary documentation. Entrants were also asked to describe how the project will build resilience. Entrants completed a table outlining the inclusion of climate adaptation strategies and indicated on the site plan or section aspects of the design strategy that would support resiliency. Finally, entrants were asked to consider how their design addressed equity for the community. Entrants wrote a short essay and indicated on the site plan or section aspects of design strategies that supported equity. Entries were judged holistically on their submission, including the material highlighting the decarbonization, resilience, and equity aspects of their project. A technical review panel considered the decarbonization strategies of each entry. This technical evaluation was then provided to the jury for their consideration. Entries were weighed individually, not in competition with others. Jury decisions were based solely on the materials submitted. Criteria included the quality of design, resolution of the program or idea, innovation, thoughtfulness, and technique. So, this year we had 135 registrations from around the world. Now I'd like to introduce you to our jury. The first juror I'd like to introduce you to is Lance Collins. Lance, you might say hi so you become live on the screen.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lance. Lance is a licensed architect and a lead accredited professional. He's a director at Partner Energy. He oversees the sustainability team there, providing design consulting and project management for projects pursuing green certifications such as LEED, Green Point Rated, and others, and zero net energy, energy modeling, and commissioning. He joins us today from his office in Southern California. Welcome, Lance. Great. Let me now introduce you to Adriana Duarte.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Adriana. She's an architect, designer, and educator with over 10 years of professional experience in architecture. She considers herself born and raised in Central California, learning from the environment's diverse climate, strong regional design aesthetic, and rich community cultures. Adriana participated previously in the Architecture at Zero competition, as I mentioned, in 2022, not as a juror, but as an entrant with the Paul Halagian Architects team. They won a merit award for their project, De La Tierra. And then she worked closely with colleagues to develop a unique design that focused on sustainable practices, as well as what it takes into consideration for the end user's culture, farm working background, and Central Valley site. And that project is now completed. So this is what can happen with entries to this competition, we're so pleased to say. Welcome, Adriana. Now I'd like to introduce you to Scott Godnier.
Good morning, all.
Hey, Scott. Scott is the managing principal at Flewelling and Moody, founded almost a century ago. Scott was not there at the founding. He oversees a talented 30-person architecture and planning firm with offices in Pasadena and Lancaster, the site of the competition. He was the 2023 president of AIA California and is currently a member of the AIA National Strategic Council. He's a member of the California Architectural Foundation and will serve as the 2026 president of the Board of Regents. Welcome, Scott.
Glad to be here. Great fun today.
Great, thanks. And the final juror I'd like to introduce you to is Allison Williams. Do you want to say hi, Allison?
Hi, everybody.
Ellison is an architect and urban designer who has amassed an international portfolio of large-scale civic, cultural, and research facilities. She's practiced at SOM, Perkins& Will, and AECOM. Her inventive instincts and inspiring interdisciplinary design leadership generated authentic and relevant buildings around the globe. She joins us from San Francisco. Allison has served as a juror and jury chair for this competition for several years, and I'd like to start out by asking Allison first and then other jury members to share some overall observations on this year's competition. Allison, do you want to begin?
Sure. This has gotten to be a kind of mainstay in my opportunity to keep myself relevant on the dialogue about net zero energy. And over the years, I think it's 10, no, or maybe more, I've just seen an increasingly fluent assortment of participants and entries, which not only, as Margie was saying, it's usually a complicated exercise to address all the issues of design, and more importantly, to think of it as one whole design process, which is about architecture and place and climate and culture. And I'm always just amazed at what people bring forward for this competition. You know, I think notably, the high school students are just incredibly impressive. You know, what they know that we didn't have a chance of even thinking about when we were that age, addressing the issues of the world that they're going to live in. You know, climate change for sure is big, but I also think in their face, importantly, is the equity component. This competition brought that into its fold maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I think we're still seeing the unfolding of how that aspect of the entries isn't presented. It's got to be more than just the words that we know are all the right words, but how does the design itself express the words in a way that's legible and subtle and enduring? So the jury talked a lot about that this time. Also, we saw the influence of AI, and I think that Margie and those who took in all the entries and put their eyeballs on them before any of us did, had to wonder, where was the boundary for AI's place in this kind of competition? So much of it was so well written, and I don't want to suggest that people on their own couldn't write some of these things, but the question mark is there. And I think the rest of the world is trying to figure out the answer to that in every profession. So I know we talked about it a lot. Maybe someone else, some of the other jurors want to comment on that as well.
You really hit the nail on the head. I think generationally, we're starting to see an acknowledgement of what equity means in their world. Time and time again in the essays, they spoke about stress, whether it was the perceived stress of the community and the lack of resources, or in the case of an emergency center, the stress that first responders must be under. So this intuitive, element is really starting to come forward, I think. And I think it's an important piece that we should continue to emphasize in future competitions.
Yeah, and I'll add on to what both Allison and Scott have said, just to echo a couple things. I think, the equity still is still in sort of its infancy stages for the profession as a whole, I think. And so we're always fascinated to see each team member's response and really looking to see how equity can sort of be translated from words to being manifest in a formal way. And I think that's part of the challenge of this competition. It's exciting to see how everybody tackled that problem. But then also kind of testing what the boundaries of equity are, not just looking at demographics, but looking at the history and the surrounding context, questions of environmental justice. What does the future look like? Figuring out how does each team member define equity, and how is that reflected in the architecture that they're creating is still, again, an open challenge to the profession as a whole. So this is an interesting exercise in that. And I think on the topic of AI, I think to me, one of the interesting pieces is, how can projects use an eye towards editing and be as concise as possible, because AI makes it very easy to do a lot. And sometimes a lot is not needed to best tell the story that you want to tell. And so how can you use some level of curation and editing via AI if you want to, but to sort of augment and tell your story the best and translate that into a better design, or, as Allison said, sort of a lot of the discussions that we had as a group.
Yeah, and I won't repeat too much because everybody else really well described everything very well with everything we discussed. But as an educator, now in my profession, AI is a big topic of how our relationship and architecture is being developed with AI, and just reminding ourselves it is a tool for us to use, not the primary designer and communicator, because that's what we're trying to do through these competitions and projects, presentations, and graphics. And like Lance was saying, less is more sometimes, not having too many things on the boards help, read everything better, understand graphics a little bit better. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I see that we're joined by Matt Garcia from SCE, and I'm just wondering, Matt, whether you might like to say a few words. I know that when I discuss this competition with students, I'm frequently asked, why would California utility companies want to support a decarbonization competition? So I'm really pleased that Matt Garcia, the Senior Manager of Engineering and Design Solutions for Southern California Edison, is with us today. He and his team are responsible for providing advanced energy, technical, and design advisory services to SCE customers, consultants, designers, builders, and architects. So I think, Matt, could you just explain why 3 California utility companies, PG&E, SoCalGas, and SCE, support this competition?
Thanks, Margie, and hopefully you can hear me, even though my video seems to be causing issues, having all kinds of fun computer problems today. But
So sorry about that.
no, my apologies to you all. But again, hopefully maybe you can see in the chat, I also tried to post a few things there. But congratulations, first and foremost, to all the participants and award winners, and certainly all the judges, the jury, yourself, all that are involved in this wonderful competition. And really for us, looking at it, we're all integrated in the looking and seeing the success of the overall climate and clean energy goals for the state, and we're all a part of making that happen. And part of what I mentioned in the chat of just how us as the utilities partnering with design professionals, the students, those that are design professionals of the future, in being able, and the importance of high performance buildings and overall structures, and how critical they are to the overall success of a sustainable California. And we all need that to be able to be continue to be successful. And we know how critical resources are, and we need to continue to be able to use them wisely. And certainly how we're structured here in California, as we well know, is considerably different than even other parts of the United States. And so we are very much have been and continue to be focused on having high performance buildings, having being on the leading edge of integration of energy into structures, self-generation, storage, resiliency, all of that importance. So really pleased to be a part of this and continue our longstanding partnership.
Thanks so much, Matt. Okay, we have many people who've been patiently waiting to hear who the award winners are, and I'm happy to say that's where we're going right now. So in this year's competition, jury members awarded winning projects with the following levels of awards. The highest level award is called an honor award. The next level is a merit award, and the final level is a citation award. At the discretion of the jury, awards were also made with the title Special Recognition for entries which inspired unique conversations or had a unique feature that the jury members wanted to discuss with all of you. After I announce each award, the jury members will comment on the entry. We'll begin with high school entries, then move to college entries, and then professional entries. So there were 3 awards to high school entrants. The first award is a merit award for the entry El Santorio from students from Burlingame High School in Burlingame, California. Scott, do you want to make the first comments?
Well, thank you. First of all, I find the level of graphics, and I think the jury found the level of graphics to be really, really spectacular in this case. Not the graphics did more than just show a pretty picture, but they also, I mean, if you look at the floor plans and the sections, they really integrated the entire story about what this building was all about. I think they were very responsive to the decarbonization strategies, as well as the issue of equity when you read their equity essay. Very well done. In fact, I think if the jury didn't know this was a high school project, they would have thought it was at least undergraduate or graduate. Other jurors? I didn't take all the words. Allison's always got something to say here.
Well, I mean, there's kind of a stately quality about it. I think that the authors, and I'm always curious whether it's an individual voice or a singular voice that is authoring some of the entries. In this case, I'll say that it feels like someone had a consistent set of thoughts about how the building would express itself. That's not to say that there couldn't have been other people on it, but often you see projects where the vocabularies are multi-minded. Here, I think there's a simplicity that's rendered through a careful editing of an attempt to address a vernacular, a cultural language of buildings. So I think that's rather sophisticated for a high school student to be achieving.
One thing, and I'll say this because it came up in our conversations on many of the submissions, and you won't see it necessarily in here, but there was a very simple integrated ramp system for accessibility. And I can't overemphasize the ability to make those that need a ramp to feel integrated within the structure and not as an afterthought. And I think the jury felt this was a very elegant solution that occurred here.
Okay. Congratulations to my neighbors in Burlingame. The second award is a citation award to students at Canyon Crest Academy in San Diego for their entry, Desert Willow Center. Allison, do you want to get us started with some comments on this entry?
Sure. Again, there was a real simplicity about this. I think part of successful architecture is understanding the sense of the place within which it resides. And I think on this one, there was a care for how the building was sited, for the idea of which side faced north. You can see it here in the image. The kind of loggia or portico on the right-hand side of the image and the skylights at the top are north-facing elements. You know, these are primary initial decisions that one makes before you even start talking about equipment or anything that it's going to take to keep a building cool. in the heat of the desert, the passive, just natural, almost indigenous moves are what make the big difference and require you, therefore, to need less kind of supporting mechanical devices. So I think this struck us. I don't know if we're showing more than one image of this or only this one. But if it's only this one, I'll just say that from the South Side, there was also an attitude about approach, about arrival, about shade, about pedestrian comfort between where you park your car and how you move to the front door of the facility itself. It created an event of the arrival sequence, places to be under shade. It was just very well thought through and delineated. So congratulations.
Any other juror comments?
Well, the use of that promenade and shading was accomplished by placing the solar arrays along that pathway, which I thought was a very ingenious solution. So often we think about mounting solar arrays on buildings, but when it makes its own architectural statement, it's rather unique.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to add, I think, and certainly, to the original comments about all the high school entries, but this particular project, I think, was very thoughtful as far as its decarbonization strategies, both in sort of system selections, but also in the materials choices, the rammed earth walls and the CLT and all these sorts of things that, just, I guess, surprised me, always impressed me at that level, as Allison alluded to earlier about being able to have that kind of information and that level of thought about decisions both from a design perspective and a decarbonization perspective that carry through the project design and were clear in the intent of what they were trying to accomplish.
Agreed with all of those comments as well. I also especially liked their strong emphasis in personal connection in their narrative. So in their narrative, they described some proven design strategies in Japan that they took elements from and used it in a parallel way in this climate and kind of took a personal connection and kind of just applied it in a more focused valley kind of region approach. So I thought I saw a lot of those different strategies being implemented around the project.
Great, congratulations. The final entry that the jury wanted to discuss was the entry named Sombrero Big from students at Admiral Farragut Academy in Tianjin, China. Although based in China, enrollment at this school, students are registered for the United States or Canadian secondary school student status. Allison and Adriana, do you want to make any comments about this?
Sure, Adriana, since I just got through talking, I'm going to let you go first.
Yes, yes, sounds good. Yeah, so this project, we came back to it a couple of times, had a lot of little discussions about it back and forth. Overall, it does a great job. Their whole submittal had so much information. You could tell there was a lot of research done, especially as we mentioned before, for a high school entry. It was very admirable, like to the detail that they looked at all the systems and the variety of equipment and approaches that were applied for the project. Some of the interior renderings were amazing, kind of just showing the different elements of wind tower that's in the middle that you see there. The reason why we were talking a lot about it was, as you guys can see it, it's a sombrero on top of a roof for a building. So the icon itself, we essentially kept coming back and forth. It's doing a representation of an icon in a very bold, strong way. And we were discussing cultural awareness and appropriateness, respect towards the culture being represented, and whether something like this, such a strong icon like the sombrero, would become a landmark or perhaps deemed disrespectful. Would it endure or insult the community that we're trying to provide a center for? So I think that was like the basis of discussions. Ultimately, we do recognize that it's a high school level approach to the design prompt. And maybe with further abstract kind of analysis of the sombrero icon, the design could have been maybe distilled into a more or less literal icon. So yeah, and then I think Allison might want to add to some of
Yeah,
that.
thanks, Adriana. I think, when you look at this, it does present this kind of gutsy, iconic, provocative, and memorable place. And we recognize that the kind of lid on the sombrero was sponsored by the Wind Tower. So, I mean, I both want to say you guys did a great job of understanding what it takes to make something visible in the landscape, to not just have the wind tower projecting up and kind of finding some language that has nothing to do with anything. But I think Adriana's point is right on point about so many of our buildings start with cartoons that look just like this because you have a series of ideas. You're kind of linking the idea of shading the building with shading the human being's needs in the heat in the sun. And after you draw that cartoon, each time the goal would be to make it more performative and productive and less obviously a sombrero. So the hope would be that as one matures the productivity of the diagram, one also begins to camouflage the literal expression of the sombrero, because I think the jury, we talked about this a lot, you can tell, we applaud it and we discourage such a literal, could be quite insulting reference. But there's a level of care with this entry. It's exquisitely produced. The renderings are wonderful. And there's skill here. There's future architectural prowess hiding under this sombrero. So congratulations to you.
Any other jurors have comments?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think to echo everything everybody's saying already, I think to me, especially at the high school level and even in college, I think it's important for students to really take the big swings and push concepts and see how far you can go. But in particular, given this site and the prompt itself, I think the piece that everybody said can be kind of problematic is that it doesn't quite have the cultural nuances associated with it that it deserves. Like Alice said, it doesn't translate from the kind of cartoonish sketch to sort of the final architectural form. We all recognized all the other the value and everything else that was produced, but sort of understanding nuance at a macro scale of on the ground, who's in this community, what some of the historical sort of representations of a sombrero may mean, both positively or negatively, and kind of getting to that level of granularity, I think was the heart of a lot of our discussion. And I think, that level of detail, depth in the design process, I think maybe would inform some of the choices a little bit differently and sort of how the final outcome kind of appeared. But, the initial sort of concept and analysis, was a great swing to take. And so we applauded everybody from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on. The jury awarded 5 projects for college student entries. The first award is a special recognition award for the entry Pueblo for students from Fengchea University in Taichung, Taiwan. Lance, do you want to start with some comments there?
Sure. So yeah, we like this project for a number of reasons. I think, you've heard us talk already about sort of different sort of approaches and level of detail to projects that we reviewed. And I think this one really stood out because it was one of the first ones we looked at to break away from the sort of traditional formal response of 2 stories and 10,000 square feet, but really look to inspiration from native and indigenous sort of vocabulary and inspired forms, i.e. the Pueblo, to create sort of a village or building as a village in this example. And then to kind of overlay the sustainability, resiliency aspects, utilizing solar panels to kind of tie all the different pieces together, kind of really brought the kind of concept to fruition. It doesn't show it in here, but there were a number of nice diagrams that showed how like the rain and groundwater systems would work, and a lot of analysis in general that really helped tell the story. And to me, that's something that I always look for is, what's the concept and what story are you trying to tell, and how does that sort of weave its way through all of the graphic representation and written words that you have on the page. And I thought this project was very successful from that perspective.
Thanks, Lance. Any other comments from jurors?
This reminds me of what the old World's Fair pavilions used to be. They were always cutting edge, always representative of a future, always a positive future. And I would say this is why competitions are so interesting, because it allows for this great exploration of design. And I think if we were to look at this from that perspective, it really stood out in a really great way. And I think when you look at it from a university perspective, this is exactly what you should be doing as part of your ongoing education. So we applaud this kind of alternative design approach.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. The next award is a citation award for the entry The Woven from students from Hanoi Architectural University in Hanoi, Vietnam. Adriana, do you want to get us started?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so this project was really strong in the sense of a concept being established. It was one of the first projects that we kind of talked about the concept behind textiles and the local Native community's relationship with weaving, as the name says it. There's a strong concept of like woven textures and research that was placed into the narrative that then gets reflected throughout the design in different forms and kind of the strategies that have been implemented throughout the design itself of the building. As you can see in the image being shown, a lot of the textiles and kind of textures are being reflected through the material selection. But then also the floor plan is very just well organized, efficient, optimal. As you guys know, there's 2 different uses in the building. It seems like it reflects both uses very well. And it has a strong ramp at the center of the plan. You guys can see that in the red on the vertical element in the image provided. But it kind of also just weaves through the building from the first to the second floor. And as Scott mentioned, and I've mentioned a lot while we were discussing, I'm a big proponent of universal design. So where a ramp could be integrated for everybody to use and become an experience, that's always great. So yeah, any other comments from the jury?
I thought the authors of this showed a really good handle on composition and materiality. These colors, this kind of muted palette, even though you don't see an arch, you don't see a sombrero, you don't see any of those things that trigger, I am here in this Latino community. You see that I am here in this place in the desert, and the people who I serve are welcome here because there's kind of subtle episodes, really subtle. This idea, as Adriana was saying, the root for the orthogonal plan is rooted in the tradition of weaving. And I think for all of us, to me, that's the kind of intelligence that we as architects want to bring to the table always, and then be literate on the issues place from a climatic standpoint as well. So again, I'm frustrated that we can't show more than one image on some of these entries, but this is one where I think the whole ramp experience and the plan commitment to the inspiration is really quite sophisticated.
Great. Okay. The next award is a citation award for the entry Casa del Viento to students from UC Berkeley. Scott, do you want to make some
Just across the
lead
bay
comment?
from you there, Margie.
My
So,
alma mater.
Mine too.
so it was interesting that a number, I won't say a number, but there were several submissions that really addressed the concept of what to do with the wind and how that, because it is a factor in the Antelope Valley. So in this image, you actually see what is a wind catcher, which looks like a clock tower or bell tower. But if you look carefully at the imagery here, when we talk about, the subtlety of abstracting cultural archetypes, you're starting to see it in this example. And I think that's what caught the jury's eyes, that, well, the floor plans are very straightforward and clean. It was the architecture that was expressed on the exterior that started to speak to those elements of the Mediterranean Spanish, culture, but in a very clean, abstract way. One of the other things I really felt that, and a number of the entries spoke to as well, was how the building was used as a wind barrier, and also to use things like the north side to have large covered areas for outdoor activities that were shaded and were very welcoming. Overall, I think we felt that this was a very clean, very well thought out entry.
Any other jurors?
Kudos also on the diagrams. I think they had some really clear and nicely organized diagrams as far as sections, decarbonization strategies, all that sort of thing.
They even had a windrose diagram.
Yes,
I think was the only one with one, which was very helpful.
Great. Congratulations. Go Bears. Okay. The next award is a merit award for the entry Crossroads, Cultivating Community, Confronting Climate from students from the University Federal de Rio Grande do Sul in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Lance and Adriana, do you have some comments?
Sure, yes. I think again, congratulations to this team. I think all of us kind of gravitated to this project pretty quickly here. I think it had a very strong civic presence. And we also like the approach of the ramp and the kind of lightness of the ramp as the sort of main point of entry into the project. I also want to say, sort of as part of the analysis and sort of research into the project, I think they demonstrated a good sensitivity to the history of the community and the culture in the area. The materials choices, I think, worked well. And a lot of the diagrams were very strong as far as demonstrating airflow and rainwater and solar and all those sorts of things. So from a kind of top to bottom package as well, too, it was all very complete and very, very thorough in how it presented to us.
Yes, yeah, and in addition, as Lance kind of was starting to say, the form, even though it's a very, simple form, it is elegant, its material selections and its placement and its approach in the floor plan as well. And I know I mentioned this before, but I think we did discuss a lot, like how are these spaces changing from one use to another? And is it just furniture coming in and out? Is it the function of the space? And I think overall this building did a good job in reflecting both uses and being very optimal and effective in its presence for that.
Yeah, I did really like the ramp a lot, and the tendency always when you see an entry that has the potential that we saw here. And knowing that it has a civic importance and a cultural responsibility, we as architects and jurors and educators start thinking about what you would tell this student they could do next to move this simple diagram into a level of sophistication. Because of the way that they have represented the ramp, it's very clear it's translucent, which means there's opportunity for color and opportunity to see movement behind that translucent screen, which could become a place for projection. And I just take off with that. And suddenly it's got this very quiet but variable presence that it can have there in its context for the fairgrounds and for itself and events of emergency. It could become a billboard. So I like this a lot. It's quiet, elegant, with dignity.
It can almost be an art piece as it elevates.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Congratulations to the team. The last award for a collegiate entry, which is an honor award, goes to Oasis for Resilience to students from the National University in Mexico.
So I have to say this was, I think, one of the most elegant solutions we saw of all of the entries. One of the things that makes this really unique too, really, is as we speak about universal access, you see this ramp as both ceremonial, but also it allows the participants to see the entire site in a very unique way. The second part that I think really stood out for us was this was one of the few that was sort of like almost a two pavilion concept, but in a very strong plan that I see, and I think the jurors felt, was a very buildable type of structure right away. And it still speaks to a very powerful, strong statement as you enter the fairgrounds from this part of the property. Other ideas from our jurors?
Yeah, I agree with everything Scott just said. I think equally powerful in this package of renderings are the views from the other side. What appears from this view to be two chunks of buildings, two chunky buildings that are connected by this very elegant ramp. But from the other side, each one of those blocks is actually got a slot running through it that provides daylight. At the base of each of those slots is a cooling pond that offers a visual, almost atrium-like setting. There's a real sophistication here, and I applaud the authors for understanding place, understanding composition, and it's heavy timber, so also bringing that vocabulary into very simple expression, embedding the trusses in the plane of the building is quite interesting to me. And there is also a stateliness and a cultural, I can't put my finger on it, but it feels like it is for the Latin culture, and it feels like it is in the desert, and it isn't screaming at you. And so congratulations, it's hard to accomplish.
Hey, Lance, do you want to talk about some of the technical comments that came up?
Sure. I mean, I think again, I'll echo everybody else on the design side of things. I think, one of the things that came up in the conversation was really relevant to evaporative cooling, and sort of the trade-off between that and solar PV, and really trying to make sure, it was clear about the types of systems that we're using. I think this project was successful in that manner, and thinking about, in the desert climate, where does your water source come from if you're going to be using evaporative cooling? You obviously have a plethora of sunlight out there, and sort of mixing systems together to become highly efficient, I think was a really good approach for a project like this. Obviously, kind of the system selection also goes with the theme of the oasis and having the water in the middle. So it was all tied together very nicely.
Great. Okay. The final award category is for professional entries. And the jury awarded a citation award for the entry Carapace, La Plaza Arts and Culture Center from the Stantec office in Houston, Texas. Adriana, do you want to make some comments about this entry?
Yes, I'll start us off. So overall, I think this project presented a very holistic and very site-forward approach. As you guys can see from the image that we have on the screen, you have a big plaza entrance that you kind of set the stage for what's underneath, actually. So the building's protected underground with a lot of activity happening below ground. But what we really talked about is just kind of just a holistic approach to it and how people are interacting with it and how it also interacts with the surrounding site of the fairgrounds. Everyone has the same approach into the building, and they're welcomed into a series of different spaces underneath with the concept of a tortoise shell being a protector. And I think that was the biggest aspect of it, that it becomes a more like secret and safe, protected space. Very stunning interiors, and then just kind of like a sneak peek on the top, kind of just drawing your eye and interacting and wanting to interact with it a little bit more.
It was the only kind of non-building entry that we received, if I'm not mistaken. And so the fact that it's subservient in a way to the vocabularies of buildings that you can see here in the background, I think is a way of performing the programmatic requirements without necessarily creating a competition of buildings. I think the one thing that the jury did feel is that the plaza here would be quite uncomfortable, and the need for the next layer of understanding of climate, which definitely going underground, you just automatically feel cooler, and that's hugely strategic. But if you're up on the deck, you're going to need a place to find respite from the sun, and to appropriate trees, some kind of low shade components, and elements that help to move the breezes across what would otherwise be almost, those people would be fried. And so that's what's missing on this, but the building's also missing, and that's what we liked.
Okay. So congratulations to the team from Stantec. The final award is a merit award for the entry La Plaza Viva from Perkins and Will in Houston, Texas. Allison and Lance, do you want to make some comments?
I'm going to let Lance go first because this is one of my alma maters. So Lance, you go first.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, just nice, very impressive concept from kind of start to finish on there. I think the energy metrics were very clear. All the ideas were very clear. I think from a design perspective, the idea of the roof overhangs for shading purposes, but also the vertical sort of material selections for screening. Again, sort of thinking of the climate as well were a very nice strategy for how the project was executed. I think, I keep coming back to the idea of storytelling, and I think this project told the story very succinctly and very rigorously all through the design. I think all of us commented like this project could be buildable just right out of the gate. I think it was, all the pieces that we were looking for, were all added, were all included in there. Again, I'll come back to the materiality. The materiality seemed very appropriate to the desert climate, but also also not uniform. So there was a sensitivity of saying, well, not just what one material works for the desert climate, but what different types of materials can be included in the design and still all be, sort of climate zone and culturally appropriate for the project as well too. So overall, I think it was just a very holistic, high quality solution to the challenge.
And then finally, I just want to add on this one, uh, the fact that it feels buildable and feels that it could be afforded for me is about being constructed within an economy of means, and the use of these screens that are not only strategically located to provide shade to the glass, but they're positioned. And again, the images aren't here on the screen, but there are some fabulous images of how the patterning of shadow is allowed to be cast on some of the solid walls, creating such a richness and a change over the course of the day that kind of elevates what is otherwise very straightforward materials in place. And so I think that was recognized as one of the elegance elements of the scheme.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, but the terracotta that you see there is actually composed of recycled terracotta roof tiles that are placed in this pattern. So it speaks to, I think, a very high abstraction of a cultural component of, Latin American architecture.
And lastly, I would like to add, again, you don't see it in the images here, but the building allows for a courtyard outside, which again is another extension of the building, but also a third space that is very common in Latino communities. So it's really nice to see that engagement of interior and exterior space through the building.
Well, congratulations to the team. This concludes our award ceremony for the 2026 Architecture at Zero competition. We're so glad you all could join us. And thank you especially, jurors, for your time, your elegance, and your brilliance. Congratulations to our winners and everyone who participated. If you're a winner, we will follow up with you directly about next steps. We're planning a webinar with AIA California to do a deeper dive into the winning entries later this summer, and we'll be in touch with all of you about those details. I'd like to thank once again our sponsors, SCE, SoCalGas, and PG&E for their support of this competition. We hope to announce another competition later this year, so stay tuned if you'd like to enter. Again, you can sign up at Architecture at Zero, architectureatzero.com website for updates. Thank you again for attending, and most of all, thanks to all of you who submitted and are trailblazing a new path for decarbonization, equity, and resilience. And with that, all the best. Will the jurors remain on, and we will close out now. Myrna.